It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Simcha and Tamar Zohar. Simcha,
Fenster.
your family name was Fenster and you were born in Slovakia. If you could tell us a little bit about your history and...
I was born in the year 41 when Slovakia was an independent state separated from the Czech Republic already, with the President Tiso, which joined as an ally to the German and Hitler. It's amazing that I was born not in the middle of the Holocaust, but at the first part of the Holocaust. And Tamar reminds me that I was asking my parents always at that time, who is making children? But okay, that's the story.
Which town were you
The town in Slovakia is Kezmarok, which was a what they call not a great town, but a big, not a big town, with about 10,000 citizens, and it was a German culture point, which means the population was divided between about 30% Hungarian, 30% Slovaks, and 30% of Hungarian, and there were about 1,200 Jews in Kezmarok, which was quite a nice community, with a chief rabbi, with a big shul. If I think about it, their shul was ready for 400 people. It's amazing that such a small town had such a nice big shul. It was burned at the beginning of the Holocaust by the German youth of the neighborhood, and it was turned down during the communist rule of Czechoslovakia. Today, there's a small matzeva,
memorial.
a small memorial for the Jewish community of Kezmarok, in the middle of the town, where the shul was stayed. In the film that was given to you, you have the picture from this place. At the Slovak Republic, already in 1939, they started what they call taking away the Jewish business from
Arization.
Arization, yeah.
Okay.
Arization, and make them Irish. And my father and my grandfather, the whole family, they had a big store of especially men's clothing, and my father was he was quick, he was a sharp fellow, and he arranged with the arizator, which was put on his business. He was a German guy, and he let him know that if they will cooperate, they could do good money. And the German was not stupid, and he accepted this deal, and they were doing nice business together. And this gave to my father and his whole family, which was his parents and 3 of his brothers, one of them already married with 2 children, and an income for living and protection from deportation. So between the year 40 until 42, the living was quite, I would not say good, but it was acceptable. And
from your mother's side, which family?
My mother's side did not have any big problem, because they are parents and 7 children, and 6 of them were in Israel.
They'd already left.
They left. I would say that in Slovakia, the rich one, they stayed, and the poor one, they were chalutzim in Israel. They were in kibbutzim and in towns, and only one of the sisters and the parents, they were living during this period of time in Leipzig in Germany, where my grandfather, his brother, had a very big establishment or a very big store of clothing, and he was quite a wealthy person. And my grandfather was living near him, and he would come to the high holidays always to Kezmarok. And 2 of his daughters joined him in Leipzig, but one of them went to Israel before, and the other one, she stayed in Leipzig and even married a Jewish fellow in Leipzig, and until the Holocaust started. My grandparents from this side, they were the last Jews that left Germany at the beginning of the war. From Germany, my grandfather went to Slovakia, took my grandmother, and they left to Israel.
1940.
In 1940.
So they were one of the last to leave.
One of the last, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the last.
One in the year 940. So
Okay.
the only,
It was before you were born, huh?
yeah, the
Okay.
only daughter that was in trouble was the one that stayed in Leipzig. And she had very good German friends, and they told her, don't worry, we are going to protect you. You don't go to the Gestapo and tell them that you're Jewish. But she, at a certain moment in 41, I think, she volunteered to the Gestapo. She went to them and told them, I am Jewish, and if all the Jews go, I go with them. And she was taken to Auschwitz immediately.
But she survived.
She survived.
She survived.
Survived.
But this is a story for another time.
Only as a short part, she came as a, what we say, as a Jewish
What?
girl to the lady to the camp, and she joined the regular people, and a group of Slovakian Jewish girls, they were lady tailors, and they said, oh, she's such a good professional, let's take them to our group. They were the Nähstube, what is called the knitting group, and they were preparing the toilets for the ladies of the camp. The Mrs. Hess, the commander's wife, and all the officers that were leading the camp. And they survived the whole war until the march. The march from Auschwitz to Germany. And she was going until she stopped in a certain position, and the Germans already did not care about those that stopped, and she survived. And she came in 1947 to Israel. A cousin of my father was the secretary of one of the camp's commander, and she helped her out with all the paperwork and everything there. Amazing. And so this is my mother's part. The whole family of my father was tied to the store, to the clothing store, and they had the Wimka. This was the certificate that they are needed for the Slovak state, and they were working at the store, and okay, there was a group of Jews that had this certificate, and they were protected from transportation.
You want me to take the story from here?
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, so Simcha was born in 1941, and we're talking now about sometimes in 1942, where the first shiluchim, how do you say it, the transportations started.
The first one was 41. The girls' transportation.
Right. The young girls, came from on 41, but in April, May 42, the real family transportations started going out from Slovakia. I'm not going into all the whole story between Slovakia and the Nazis, all these agreements between them, how they did it. I want to go now to a story about Eduard Laufer. This person, Eduard Laufer, how he comes into the family story of Simcha. Eduard Laufer was born in 1895, and he in Czech Republic, and he
Slovak
in Czechoslovakia, whatever. Maybe I'm not,
No, it was united. It was Czechoslovakia.
to separate it into
Anyway, and as a young man, he was already in the army of the Habsburg German Republic at the First World War. He was already in the army. He was wounded in the army, and he at these battles, but he came back and he settled in Nitra. Nitra is a town in
Slovakia.
In Slovakia. He got married over there, and he had a boy, and he lived over there. So when the Nazi regime came into power, he had a brother in Prague, and he was there when the Nazi came in 1939. That's what he tells in his testimony. He gave to Yad Vashem. His name is Eduard Laufer, and we, Simcha and myself, we decided to publish his testimony in 2007. We decided to publish it as a book, and we put few photos of where is it? Of Kezmarok, which are of course not the original ones, but this can give us
it's a good idea. It
good
shows,
idea what was there. Anyway, to make a long story short, this guy, Eduard Laufer, came in December 1941. In December 1939, came one day home. He was at home in December 1939 when his wife came back home from the market, and all of a sudden he tells us that he hears screaming. There was a guy from the Halinka Garde. Halinka Garde was the Slovak fascist
power organization.
Yes, whatever. And there was a guy who came home with her and started hitting her, telling her that she shouldn't have gone to this market on this and these hours, which the Nazis decided that Jewish ladies don't go into the market
before 10 o'clock.
Before 10 o'clock in the morning. So he came in and he started beating her, and Laufer tells us that he hit him back, and he put him down, and the guy was either dead or almost dead, and he had to run away. He ran away from the house and he met a person. He tells us everything in this testimony. And he found a friend of his who helped him to get false documents as an Ari on the name Teofil Gula. Teofil Gula, of course, it's not a Jewish name, it's somebody, and there was a person by this name, but he gave him this false paper, and the Laufer started running away from Nitra, left his wife and son, and he tells us how he survived doing these things, going to that place, and finally he is becoming in charge of a business of Jews, of a Jew, which was in the Shmate business.
Garments.
Scrap and old materials and things like that. And
which was a very important.
During the war, it was very important business because, you know, in the war they need all these metals, all this scrap, and he did a very good job apparently, and he tells us that in 1934, I believe, when was it?
40.
In 1942, March 1942, he arrives in Kezmarok as a person who runs a Jewish, an old Jewish business, and he's settling down in Kezmarok. At that point, I don't know if his father knew him already.
As a Gentile.
He came as a Gentile. Nobody thought that he's a Jewish person.
My father didn't know him.
No, at that point he didn't. So he is settling down, also running this type of business over there. He is joining the Halinka Garde, which we spoke before about, and he has those units, those, how do you say, madim?
Okay, maybe
Dress. A special dress.
a uniform. type of
Uniforms. Sorry. He is wearing their uniforms. He's going to drink with them at the pub. He is getting friends with them, and he is a Teofil Gula, Gentile guy. Nobody knows who he is, basically. And at this point, in 1942, we are talking about March 1942, he comes to Kezmarok. He tells us that he understood and he was involved in taking the Jews out of Kezmarok in April and May 1942. He was involved as a Halinka Garde guy, and he managed to he found all kind of excuses that he has his business to do, and he didn't want to take part in it. And also at that point, he already had few people he knew from the Jews. You know, he was an arizato on a Jewish person, on a Jewish business. Mr. Gross he mentioned, and one time he tells us that he was very sick, and Dr. Lichter took care of him and make him well again. And so he had few people already that he knew, Jewish people, but of course they never knew that he is a Jewish guy. So he tells us that he is trying to help them in 1942. At that point, in April 42, Simcha will tell us what happened with his father, young brother, Mendu, who was taken in Lela Seder away from his family.
From the shul home. The Slovaks arranged to catch all the Jews, and he disappeared. They did not know where and how, but he did not contact anybody, and he disappeared, and they did not know what was his fate. Many, many years later, a survivor of the Auschwitz camp, which was from our town, told my father, listen, I met your brother in Auschwitz, and I know that he was killed because they claimed that he stole bread. Said there was nobody that did not take bread, and he was executed. And when we visited Auschwitz, we found in the list of the murdered, of the dead, his name with the date. The date was July or August.
Yeah.
When he was executed.
In July. We just had the outside now.
He died in the hospital. That was the official certificate. So we found out that it's Hey Be'av.
Yeah, it was now, only now.
Yeah,
so this was a young
the youngest brother.
He was 20 years old at that
21
point.
too.
And he was executed in Auschwitz, and we had the Yortzeit now. Now we're coming back to 1942 now, May and April. But before everything, I want to show you in the Slovak edition of Eduard Laufer testimony, there is a photo which we gave. You know, the guy who put this in translated this book to Slovak. We gave him this photo, which is the family store of Simcha's grandparents, and then later on his father, and in Kezmarok, the one for the clothing. And also I want to show you how was the house of the rabbi over there during the Holocaust look like. This is the house of the rabbi. Rabbi, what was his name again? Greenburg. Rabbi Greenburg. Okay, this is the edition. And here we also have the photo of Eduard Laufer as Theophil Gula.
Can I ask, what happened to his wife and their child?
They lived until the end of the war and were killed by local citizens in Nitra.
He writes it in his testimony that he found out about his wife and child who was already 15 years old at that point, and they were killed, you know.
It's so sad that he couldn't save them.
The end of the story I will tell you later about what happened to him. So this Theophil Gula is there in Kezmarok trying to help few of his friends, Jewish friends. He succeeded partly. Some of them didn't survive. And at that point, in May, his younger brother of his father we spoke about, but the rest of the family, Simcha's grandparents and
two brothers,
two uncles, the entire family of his father's side were sent away. Please tell us about what happened there.
What my father told us, that many people that know him came to him and said, your family is on the street and they are asking to find you. You should take them out of the transport.
It was May 1942 when it happened.
But he did not succeed, and they were taken, and according to his information, everybody in Europe was taken to Auschwitz. That was the story. But they were taken to Sobibor, and he knew from some informant, Slovak guy, that they were all executed. And so he was staying there with us, my sister, myself, my mother, and this was the end of the family. And
so he's still in the store over there?
Yeah, he continued in the store because the store gave him the protection.
When did they start hiding? Later on?
In 1944.
Ah, okay.
And your sister, was she...
She was older than me in 3.5 years.
What was her name?
Hannah.
Yeah. Helena. Okay, let's go. Then between 42 and 44 was a little bit,
According to the historian books, they stopped this evacuation of Jews after September, October of 42, and they started again in 43 and 44. According to the Jewish leaders of the time in Bratislava, the major city of Slovakia, the Jewish people, they thought that this was a result of the bribe that was given to the leadership of Slovakia and the Nazi representative in Slovakia. But the Nazis themselves, they say that it was planned like that they wanted to get rid. The Slovak Jews was 100,000 people. So they did not care so much to make a big deal about it. For them, the Hungarian people with 1 million Jews and all other population.
But that was much later.
And so it was. There was a pause in taking Jews to the labor camp or to the death camp, and it was a quiet.
Between 42 and
44.
And spring 44. Now Edo, let me put in some of his. Okay, Edo tells us that at that point some of the Jews already started hiding because not everybody was protected by Aryaization of like his father was.
Certificate.
And there were people who were already hiding. And Laufer tells us about a whole organization that he was a part of it, that they were sending food to people who were hiding by some of not only himself, but he arranged with other people that he knew, some Jewish people too that were also disguised as non-Jewish. And there was one lady, Mrs. Mendelovich, who is mentioned also in his testimony, and we went to Jerusalem when we put this story together in 2007. We went to visit her, and she was still alive, and she said, wow, I'm still thrilled, excited to mention it. She said Eduard Laufer was a tzaddik, and she didn't know that he is not, that he's Jewish, and he's not. It only came out after the war, everybody found out. So he's trying to help people in this way, and in the meantime he's still mingling with all these Nazis, and he's trying to understand what's going on and what will happen. And in 1944, as we said, spring 1944, and after the final solution was made in 1942, you remember, in Wannsee and all this story. So in 1944, they decided to exterminate the rest of the Jews in Slovakia.
This was after the Slovakian revolt.
And then in September 44, there was
This started in July,
August 44. The partisans, the Slovak partisans, decided to fight against the Nazis in Slovakia. Unfortunately, in September, this was how do you say, נכשל.
It failed. They did not succeed.
They didn't succeed, and then they were hunting the rest of the Jews. So his family also had to hide at that point, and they had to hide. Simcha, if you can tell us, as a young boy, Simcha is now already 3 years old, okay?
And Simcha, do you have any memories, any recollections?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to.
My memory starts really after we were in the bunker, in the hiding place.
But before,
the story before was that my father had an agreement with the local policeman that he is going to hide us in his cellar. But the Germans came in Slovakia. They really occupied Slovakia, and they were in an amok to kill all the Jews quickly. So the local people started to be scared to hide Jews, and really most of the rest of the Jews that were in the area of Kezmarok, they were looking to run away, to hide in the country. And Laufer, at that time, he is in his business, in his scrap business, was connected to a family that had a transportation company. They were taking the scrap to the train, they were using their wagons and their cars to give service to his company, and he became very friendly with them. And
he mentions their names. There were two brothers.
Three.
Jan. There were three brothers, but we know only two names. Jan and Martin Shilon. The Shilon family, these brothers, really helped him later on also in escaping, in taking out of the city of the Jews, including his family. And Martin Shilon, Laufer tells it in his testimony that at that point in 1944 he revealed his
identity.
No, he revealed תוכנית.
His plan
to take out people from the city, and he's telling Martin Shilon, I have good business for you. You will get money and you take these people out. And the Shilon family dug a bunker in their house, and when we were in Kezmarok, we were there. We saw the bunker, the original one, and in this bunker they used to hide people overnight or during the day mainly, and maybe for 2 days, and then smuggle them outside to the mountains, to the upper mountain with the trees, and to hide them in few places. So he's telling us in his testimony that that's what he did with Shilon's brother.
And Shilon, were they Jewish or they?
No,
they were Gentile. They were local. They also didn't know that this guy is a Jewish guy. He is a Teofil Gula. And he tells us a scary story. In the middle, he tells us that
in the
one
middle,
day,
he said that the real Gula came back from Germany.
The original Gula came from Germany, and
came back from Germany, and he told him, you are taking my identity.
Yeah.
And he said, he did a whole...
He paid him a lot of money, and he got rid of him.
He paid him every month, and
told him, you better keep quiet.
I am an officer in the Slovak army, all kind of stories, and he got rid of him. But
okay, let's go back to 1944.
In 44.
Yeah.
And
so you are
my parents, they were this German, this Slovak, which
officer, no?
Police officer, we told him, I will hide you. He got drunk completely, and his wife said that he cannot do it. So went to another place and had to run away from there. And if you imagine that in such a situation, every step outside of apartment,
was dangerous.
outside of the house, was dangerous.
Yeah.
First of all, my father was well known in the town. But he had, only to add to his problems, an uncle of my mother and his wife came from Bardiov, which is about 2 hours of driving, and said, I am with you. If you don't take us with you, you will have to, we will take you with us. What means going after all the Jews.
Yeah.
And a cousin of my father, which was at that time about 20 years old,
Also from Bardio, right?
from Bardiov, he really volunteered at the beginning of the war to the Slovak army, and he defected. And he came to Kezmarok to our parents, and he was living with us. He had a very good Irish look, and he was completely free during the time. And when this situation happened that we did not have where to go, my father sent him to Gula, to Laufer, told him, you tell him that we know that he's Jewish and he should save us. And he went to them, and Laufer, which was, I said once that he could be a great actor here in the theater. He told him, I don't know what you are talking about, but send me the lady that they are hiding at her house, the wife of this police officer, send her to me. She came to him. He made a whole story about it, that she's hiding Jews.
He knows that she's hiding.
Yeah, but I am a good Christian and I will not harm you. So at afternoon you bring the children to me. This was not such a big danger because she was a goite, and okay, she took my sister and me to him.
Your sister was how old then?
If I was 4, she was 7.
You were at that point three and a half. Yeah. Okay.
So
She was 7.
she took us to him, and he gave us sleeping pills, and he sent us with one of the wagons, the Shilon wagons. He had cars with horses out of this town to the Polish border, to a town, a Slovak town near the Polish border.
Żdiar.
And there was already a concentration of few Jewish families that were taken out from the city.
Only lately, after we visited Kezmarok in 2015, only then we found out that the mayor of Żdiar was a father-in-law of one of the Shilons. And then we understood how come Żdiar became a location for smuggling and spreading all these people that needed a shelter, during the end. Nobody knew it's going to be the end of the war, So he took them, the children, to Żdiar. And then what happened with you, the rest of the family?
The family, during the night, they made a Purim show. They put on farmers' clothing and all kind of equipment, like they are forest cutters, and they came over
to the Shilon's house, to the bunker.
To the Shilon bunker. The bunker was on the railroad of Kezmarok, and if you cross the railways, you went directly into the forest.
Yeah.
The forest that was going onto the Tatra mountain. But we came in there.
They came. You weren't there in the bunker, right?
My parents came in and
And
few more.
let me tell the story about that he tells in the document, in the testimony. He tells that his mother came with his father and his the rest of the family that were, and she was.
No, they didn't.
She fell on the floor and she started screaming, "Latzi," his father's name. "How come you bring us to this person? He will kill us." He tells this because he knew that he is a Jewish guy, and he's going to help them. But she didn't know. His mother didn't know, and she was sure that that's the end of them. And then the rest of the story is different, of course. And they succeeded to take them out to the forest the next day and to bring them to.
I thought it is 4 or 5 kilometers, but they were walking 30 kilometers. 30
By
kilometers.
foot.
During the day, we were sleeping in the forest, and at night they continued. And there were some older people there. They were older people, and he took us to Jar, near a.
Then they met you, right? And your
Yeah.
sister.
They walked all the way
They walked all the way to Żdiar.
They walked out to there, and there they met some people, and those people, they took them this area from Żdiar into Poland, and we visited it.
Yeah.
When we visited Kezmarok.
It was like no man's land at that point.
At that
it was
time,
in the border. They brought
today,
them to Lapshanka.
at the time, this was not far from the Polish best ski area. But at that time, it was really a complete no land. It was on the border of Slovakia. It was not far. This was the way to Hungary, and
Krakow.
many Jewish people that escaped from Poland came to Kezmarok and
Through.
were taken
Through the border.
to the border of Hungary, and some of them succeeded to survive, and it was not an easy story. But
So they brought you to Lapshanka. Lapshanka is a small
Lapshanka is a
village.
small village that some of them were farmers. I think most of them were just people that lived on smuggling through the border, food and all kind of things.
But Simcha, you said that at this point you already remember few things.
Yeah, at the bunker I remember from the
In
beginning,
Lapshanka.
and this was, the farmer had a big room.
Living room.
If you, I don't know, today they don't build like that. They had a big room, and around the big room, all kind of corners, there were rooms where the family was sleeping. For us, he cut a part of the big room with a wall, and inside a corner, I would say 3 or on 5 meters, the beginning was our family, the cousin, the young cousin, and the uncle and his wife, and we were put inside. Nobody talks during the time that anybody is in the house, and it was not easy at all. And my father said that he had to tell me all the time stories, because if not, I would
Keep him quiet.
I would cry. And when German or allies of the German passed by, my father and his cousin had to hide in one of the roofs, in the straw in the roof, and the Germans were going and shooting into the roof. And if they were lucky, they were not hit. And there we spent 6 months. And at night, my father was going and met one of the farmers that was going to Kezmarok, and he was bringing money or bringing medicaments. And they were stealing part of the things that we ordered, and they were stealing some of the money. But at the end of 44, my father said that he was already on the edge of his money. But what is interesting, that one of the German neighbors
In Kezmarok.
my father told him to go to the bank and release a. He had in the bank clothes and all kind of
Collaboration, like for the business.
As a guarantee for loans.
Yeah.
The German guy told him the war will be over, you will pay me, and he gave the money to the guy. And
That they can stay in Lapshanka,
Yeah.
They paid the guy over there.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
But he risked his life by doing it.
He risked his life, of course. Of course, if they would have found him, then-
the danger, those guys lived in a dangerous life.
yeah.
But when they were caught with Jews in the village, the Germans came in, took all the population of the village,
Yeah.
including the Jews that were in the village,
Of course.
and put them in the church and burned down the church. And
Very risky.
what?
When did you hear about the Red Army that...
Can I just ask, did you have enough food when you were, or did you go hungry?
They
or
gave us food.
You
over
never,
there? It was a farm.
but you had enough food. You don't remember.
We did not suffer from hunger, I think.
He doesn't remember that he was hungry.
And did you ever go outside?
Once.
Only at night.
Once, at one night during the 6 months, the son of the farmer took us out into the yard in the snow, and it was something unbelievable.
He remembers this.
You couldn't even go at night by yourselves, or
No.
just too dangerous.
You know, this is a mountain area. All the area is mountains. My father and his cousin, they walked one night, and suddenly his cousin disappeared into the snow. It completely disappeared, and took him out, and he had a
Pneumonia. He was
pneumonia,
sick.
and he almost did not come out of it.
So you only went out once.
That's what Simcha remembers.
Simcha,
as
and you remember
3
going
years
out?
old. 3 years
He
old.
was
and
sick, yeah.
He was almost, yeah.
And they had to take the older couple, my mother's aunt and
her husband.
uncle, and they had to find them another place because they were fighting all the time.
They were fighting. They were.
It was not a pleasant situation. That was I mean.
And after the 6 months,
After the 6 months, suddenly the Russian army came in from the east side, into Slovakia. This was a miscalculation of the Slovak partisans. They were thinking that they will start a revolt against the government and the Russians will come and help them. But the Russians stopped and waited until all the partisans and the revolution was turned down and many of the partisans killed, and then they came in with as the new governors.
So in February, when were you?
In January
released?
45, we came back to Kezmarok. We came back to our apartment, our previous apartment that was taken by the Alenka Garda. And
Laufer says that he met them. He tells us in his testimony that he met them when they arrived on the way to Kezmarok.
During this time, Laufer, which was caught by the Gestapo people, succeeded to escape, and he hid in his bunker in the mountain.
Yeah, that's also, he tells us.
This is part of his story.
Yeah, in 1944, after he helped everybody to go out, they caught him and they
almost
released his
beat him up and
identity and beat him up, and he's telling that he was climbing the chimney, and he arranged for himself in the mountains, he came
to the Shiloh.
He came and he arranged for himself a bunker to hide out in case it will happen, and it did happen that they caught him, but he managed to escape, and he hid in the Tatra mountains in the bunker until the Russian army came in, and then he tells the story how he met Simcha's family on the way back to Kezmarok, and all of a sudden everybody knew that he was a Jew, and
Simcha, do you remember seeing him? Do you have any recollections of seeing him?
We had a connection here in Israel with
and
him.
then he is helping the Haganah, arranging guns and
Czech regime, Czech
so he helped with, because Czech was the only
armory to bring
to
Israel, to Haganah, and then he made Aliyah, and he remarried with a woman. They never had children together, and he remarried, and they lived in Netanya.
Tamar, can I just
and we met him. He was in our wedding, and this is a photo from our wedding of Eduard Laufer over here, the black one.
It's amazing.
Eduard Laufer, how I met him. Apparently when I met him, I never knew the story. I only heard the story later on.
Does he write that he tried to help save his own wife and his son?
He could not.
He could not save them.
I know, but it must have been so hard to save.
We didn't speak about it, people didn't talk. People didn't talk at that point. So one final thing I want to tell you. When we found out that Laufer doesn't have any children, no family, no descendants, we heard about the Bnei Brit organization who gives
it's recognition.
The recognition to Jews who saved Jews. We got in touch with them, and after doesn't matter how much time, they last Yom HaShoah they gave us the teuda, no?
It's a certificate and a medal.
Certificate, and I will show you the certificate. I have it here, okay?
And if you could show the pictures of, it's beautiful, of your parents.
Yeah.
He's my parents.
Simcha's parents. His father. This photo was taken after the war, right, Simcha? Your father's photo.
No,
This photo was taken here in Israel, yeah.
And can I just ask?
And I think this this is his sister, Simcha's sister, over here.
And your
But
sister,
later on, here in Israel, of course.
is she still alive?
No, unfortunately.
And those families that saved you, even were they given Chasidei Umot Olam?
no.
Is it because they received money in return?
Right.
But still,
Narishkeit.
but still, what they did, risking their lives, it's remarkable. It's incredible.
They did remarkable things, and there was a committee that declared the people Chasidei Umot Olam. So when there was, what was her name? The lady.
Me?
The lady.
Me, Aliska? לא.
המתרגמת.
נו, לא זוכרת עכשיו את השם. ביד ושם.
Yeah, she succeeded with all these things, and she was
pattern, no?
pattern. When she was out of the committee, suddenly there were no more Chasidei Umot Olam from Slovakia. In reality, if you shared the expenses of the food that they gave you,
they risked their lives.
They risked their life. They risked their life.
I think it's unbelievable to risk their lives, even if they were given a little bit of money they had to provide food.
Even they were given a lot of money. They risked their life.
For sure they risked their lives.
But also after the war, now I know, people didn't want to dig very hard into their past. I don't remember his family trying to find out and tell us who was the family over there in Lapshanka that helped them and did this,
Lapshanka, they were, how do you say, they were burglars. Lapshanka, this was their profession.
Okay, but the Shilon's brothers, we tried our best to get a certificate for them as Chasidei Umot Olam. Of course, they are not alive anymore, but the family, we met them. We met them over there.
You went back in.
And we came, and there were the amazing story that they told us about, a different story.
With a plate.
With a plate.
They were given a plate.
Oh, you saw this. Very good.
That plate is in Yad Vashem, I
we
think.
went to Yad Vashem and we gave this to Yad Vashem, to what's his name? Michael, the one who is
in charge of the...
That plate was given to them...
To Yad Vashem. That plate was given to them by a lady, which they couldn't say what was her name. So that's why we can't even track, and find out. And she never came back to
reclaim it.
To take the plate. So
and
we
you
don't know what happened to her.
You gave the plate to Yad Vashem.
Of course, to Shmirat Chafatzim.
There was one more story that I wanted to tell, that I missed it. In the fall of 42, after most of the Slovak Jews were taken to the camps, my father decided that it will be safer or more secure if we go to Hungary, because the notion was that in Hungary they were not taken to the concentration camps. So we bought papers and passports and paid a lot of money to make us legit. And my mother, with my sister and myself, she went with a guy, and then all the Jews, that he was the escort. And the story was like she is running away from her husband with these older Jews, and they are going to Hungary. And the guy that took us to the border, he took all the belonging and disappeared. And the border police caught us, and the next day they took us to Žilina, which was the center of transport to Poland. And from there, every time that 1,000 Jews were coming, they would send a transport. And we were put in this camp in Žilina, and my father, that was told, you never know where he got his information, that we are in Žilina, and Žilina is about 3 hours from Kezmarok
By car.
by car, and he took a taxi cab, took his yellow star off, and went to the camp, and went to the commander and bribed him. He said with a lot of sum of money, and he was told that this commander did not take bribe from anybody, but he told him, you are a brave Jew, at 8 o'clock at the evening, your wife and the 2 children are going to be at the gate. 5 minutes later, if they were caught there, you don't know me, I don't know you. And my father took us back to Kezmarok.
That was
This was in 42.
42.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's a
yeah.
miracle.
Unbelievable.
After it was like the autumn, like September, October was.
October.
Your sister tells us it was very cold outside.
October.
He was a year and a half, and his sister was 4.5 or 5, something like that. Very brave story. Now I
That's the
only want to show
certificate.
you this teuda
Jewish Rescue citation.
that
Eduard Laufer.
Laufer received now from Bnei Brit, Irgun Bnei Brit.
Such
We are
a
very grateful for them that they recognized the story and they gave us this, even though we are not descendants, we are only survivors.
if not for Laufer, he saved your family. He saved.
Of course,
yeah.
of course.
So, can I ask, what message can you both impart to your children and grandchildren and future generations?
What message?
Yeah. Because you've gone through so much and you've seen so much, and
We keep telling the story all the time. Simcha has the main story that we just heard, and I have my side of the story with my parents and the family of my parents, and we can keep telling them. And now we have grandchildren, and we have great grandchildren who are already interested in the past, and we only wait for them to ask us that we should tell them what happened, and to be grateful to Kadosh Baruch Hu that we're here, we survived, and we are here in Israel hopefully for many years and for good times.
so I just want to thank you both. If I can just come in. This has been such an honor and a privilege, and meeting you at the Bnei Brit, it's all min hashamayim, but I'm so grateful, and it's unbelievable, your story. It's mamish miracles. It really is.
I imagine that big part of the survivors live with miracles.
Of course.
Yeah. But that you kept your faith, your emunah. You've always kept your emunah.
Of course, his
faith.
parents.
You kept your faith. You were a kippah. So you should just have mazel and brocha at Mayveh. And thank you so much. And Tamar, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And you should
You're
only have
welcome.
mazel and brocha.
You're welcome.
And it's so wonderful to see, that for me, in particular that you remained from, that you kept your emunah. It's
His parents
unbelievable.
were living in Bnei Brak, and his mother's side, many of them also, lived in Bnei Brak, so they kept emunah. What can I say?
Thank you so much. All of Hashem's blessings.
Part did not keep.
But all of Hashem's
parents.
blessings at Mavis Shrim, and I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Very important.
It's such an honor. It's such an honor.
Very important.